MAGA Mike Johnson just got shattered on live TV, and nobody in Washington can believe how fast this is collapsing. A brand new member of Congress walks in the door, signs one piece of paper, and suddenly the entire Epstein cover-up machine is seconds from blowing open. You can see the panic. Johnson's voice cracking, Trump sending veiled threats, Republicans scrambling as 50 to 60 of their own prepare to jump ship. Because if these files drop, we're talking names, power, money, foreign ties, the kind of truth that ends careers overnight. And now Congress can't stop the vote. This isn't chaos. This is the fall. Stay right here.
And finally do the right thing and help us to bring an end to the pain of the American people. This has gone on too long. Too many people have suffered, and it's long overdue. That's the update I wanted to give you this morning. There are probably lots of questions, but I'm going to get a lot of my own questions answered later today, so stay tuned for more. Thanks so much.
They always tell us no one is above the law. You hear that in speeches, in campaign ads, whenever a politician wants to sound serious. But tonight, we're watching a real test of that sentence. Not a slogan, a test. Because for the first time in a long time, Congress is on the brink of dragging some of the most protected, powerful, well-connected people on Earth into the light. And the man caught in the middle of that collision is MAGA Speaker Mike Johnson. Here's the basic picture. Congresswoman-elect Adelita Grijalva has finally been allowed to be sworn in after weeks of delay. For nearly 2 months, more than 800,000 Americans were effectively told, sit down. You don't get a voice, because one man, Mike Johnson, didn't want to deal with the political consequences of her vote. That's not democracy, that's gatekeeping. And the moment she takes the oath, the second she becomes an official member of Congress, she's expected to become signature number 218 on a discharge petition to force a vote to release the Epstein files. That number is everything. At 218, the Speaker's chokehold snaps.
Hi, friends! I told you if I had an update, I would let you know. So it looks like I'm going to get sworn in this week. After 7 weeks of waiting, I almost can't believe it's true. I am really upset that one of the first votes that I will take is on a bill that does nothing for affordable health care for the American people. And I also have to say that we have to do something to make sure that one person can't silence the voices of 813,000 people. This can never happen again to another member-elect that is waiting in the wings because someone doesn't want to do their job or because they're playing politics. I'll keep you posted on any details.
Let me slow that down because the process matters here. In the House, regular members can't just walk a bill to the floor, drop it down and say, we're voting. Only the Speaker controls the schedule. That means one person can bury something the entire country wants to see. The only way around that is this rare emergency tool called a discharge petition. If 218 members, a majority of the House, put their names on that petition, the Speaker is overruled and the bill must get a vote. No more hiding, no more dodging, no more we'll see. So when we say Grijalva is the 218th signature, we're talking about the exact moment democracy cuts the middleman out and demands sunlight.
And we're also honored to be joined by a great man. He will go down as a great man someday, Speaker Mike Johnson. Speaker. Wherever you may be, Speaker. We love you, Speaker. There he is, right there. Good. Got a good location. He always gets a good location. And congratulations to you and to John and to everybody on a very big victory. We're opening up our country. Should have never been closed. Should have never been closed.
Now look at what she's walking into. One of her first votes is on a Republican bill that threatens affordable health care for millions by refusing to extend ACA subsidies. She's been kept out of the chamber, her constituents silenced, and the second she walks in the door, she's forced to vote on whether 20+ million Americans see their premiums spike. And yet somehow, Republican leadership had all the time in the world to stall on a simple vote about releasing files connected to a convicted sex trafficker and his network of powerful friends. It tells you where their urgency is. It's never about you. It's about protecting the club. And then there's Trump, hovering over Mike Johnson like a shadow. While all this is building, Trump steps up to a microphone at a Veterans Day event and starts doing what mob bosses always do, sending messages in public that are meant to be heard in private. He calls Mike Johnson a great man, gives him the best seat in the House, praises him in this very deliberate, almost theatrical way.
Un clan de pedófilos quiere. A clan of pedophiles wants to end democracy in Colombia. Harsh, yes, but that's the reality. And so that the list doesn't come out, they send us armored vehicles to kill fishermen from the city and threaten the neighbor, whether dictator or not. How is it that the people of Colombia are going to applaud invading their brother, which is not the president, but the people of Venezuela?
On the surface, it looks like flattery. In the context of an impending vote that could expose God knows who in the Epstein network, it looks a lot more like a warning. You want to stay a great man in my movement? Don't let those files see daylight. If that sounds dramatic, look at Trump's track record with the people he chooses to help. This isn't theory, it's documented. We've seen the reporting on a Long Island drug dealer who got a break thanks to Trump, only to later be convicted for molesting his kid's nanny and assaulting a toddler. We've seen a Trump-pardoned supporter who fired a gun during the January 6th attack, only to be arrested later for kidnapping and sexual assault. Again and again, the pattern is the same. If you're in the circle, if you're politically useful or personally loyal, the rules don't apply. Law and order is for the out-group. Mercy and protection are for the in-group. That's why the joking references inside Trump world to a PPP, pedophile protection program, are so grotesque. It's not just tasteless humor. It's a glimpse into the mindset. This idea that shielding abusers, looking the other way, cutting deals, handing out favors, yeah, that's all just part of the game. Meanwhile, they go on television every night and scream about groomers and protecting the children because a teacher has a pride flag or a library has a book they don't like. They manufacture hysteria over drag shows while quietly resisting transparency around one of the most notorious child abuse and trafficking operations of our time. That's not moral outrage. That's projection.
If you tune in to CNN or MSNBC any day right now, they think the whole government shutdown on the Republican side is because they don't want to do any work because they don't want to have any votes on Epstein.
Right.
What do you think?
I tell you what, I've started to question, is this why we're not in session?
Really?
Yeah. This is that the discharge petition is sitting there.
Explain that.
So everyone, for how many years now, all of us have been calling to release the Epstein files. And Thomas Massey entered a resolution to release it. Yeah. And I'm a co-sponsor. I want to release the Epstein files. And it's been blocked over and over, unfortunately. And so there's a discharge petition. So just so you know, as a member of Congress, I cannot force my bills to the floor for a vote. Only the Speaker can decide to bring a bill to the floor for a vote. And so when the Speaker is refusing to bring a bill forward, if 218 members of Congress get together and all sign a discharge petition and we put our name on there, it overrides the Speaker and it's forced to the floor for a vote. So right now there's 217 signatures. And there is one...
Mostly Dems.
Yeah, mostly Dems. There's only 4 Republicans, Thomas Massey, myself, Nancy Mace, and Lauren Boebert. We're the only Republicans on the discharge petition.
And the rest of the world sees it. When the president of Colombia is standing on a stage saying that the United States is becoming known as the country of pedophiles, not because of our people, but because of what our elite are willing to cover up. That should stop every American cold. Forget left versus right for a second. That's our reputation he's talking about. That's our flag, our institutions, our supposed commitment to human rights being dragged through the mud because some powerful men might be in those files and would prefer that you never see their names. What makes this moment even more revealing is who's starting to complain about the stonewalling. When someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene is on Megyn Kelly's show asking whether the reason Congress has been kept out of session is to avoid voting on the Epstein files, that tells you just how obvious the stall has become. I don't agree with MTG on much, to put it gently, but when even she is raising eyebrows over why this has been blocked for so long, you've crossed into pure absurdity. The secrecy has gotten so heavy-handed that it's triggering suspicion inside the very movement that's supposed to be helping run the cover-up.
Let me ask you something else. There's been public reporting that Jeffrey Epstein showed people photos of President Trump with half-naked young women. Do you know if the FBI found those photographs in their search of Jeffrey Epstein's safe or premises or otherwise? Have you seen any such thing?
You know, Senator Whitehouse, you sit here and make salacious remarks, once again trying to slander President Trump left and right, when you're the one who was taking money from one of Epstein's closest confidants, I believe, I could be wrong, correct me, Reid Hoffman, who was with Jeffrey Epstein on multiple occasions. And the senator sitting right next to you tried to block the flight logs from being released. Yet you're grilling me on President Trump and some photograph with Epstein? Come on.
The question is, did the FBI find those photographs that have been discussed publicly by a witness who claimed Jeffrey Epstein showed them to him? You don't know anything about that. Okay.
And yet, even with that pressure, the structure still favors those at the top. Greene herself lays it out. As a member, she can't force her own bill to the floor. Only the speaker can. Only the person sitting in that one chair decides whether a bill exposing a sex trafficking network gets a vote. That is a wild amount of power to hand any one politician, especially one operating under the thumb of a man like Donald Trump. That's why the discharge petition is such a big deal. It's not just a procedural gimmick. It's a revolt against one-man rule inside the House. Outside of Congress, you see the same dynamic in hearings. Take the exchanges between Senator Sheldon Whitehouse and Trump allies like Pam Bondi. When he asks, very specifically, whether the FBI found photos Epstein allegedly showed people, photos of Trump with half-naked young women, does he get a direct answer? No. He gets deflection, counterattacks, lectures about donor politics. Everything except the one thing you'd expect from someone who supposedly wants to clear the air, a straight, unequivocal denial backed by facts. That dance, that desperate avoidance of simple answers, is the body language of a political class that's afraid of a paper trail. Meanwhile, the financial side of the Epstein story keeps seeping out in drips and drabs. Allegations of thousands of suspicious activity reports flagged by banks. Talk of a billion-dollar money laundering operation running alongside the abuse. Reports of Epstein acting as a middleman between the authoritarian leaders and foreign defense contractors, using access to powerful people and the compromat he allegedly collected to broker deals and enrich himself. When you put that together, you're not just looking at one predator. You're looking at an entire ecosystem that survives on secrecy and leverage. The kind of ecosystem that sees full transparency as an existential threat. And that's exactly why this potential vote is such a turning point. Representative Ro Khanna and others have talked about bringing survivors of Epstein's abuse to the Capitol when the petition kicks in, literally standing them right there as this moves forward. That's not theater, that's necessary, because for years, this story has been told as if it's mainly about famous names and tabloid headlines. It's not. It's about real people whose lives were shattered so powerful men could feel untouchable. It's about girls who were treated as disposable. aircraft logs that never got fully examined, and sealed documents that should have been opened long ago. The moral question for Congress is brutally simple. Do you stand with those survivors or with the people who use their money and status to buy silence? There's no third option. There's no neutral ground where you can say, well, I'm not sure, I need more time. It has been decades. Time is the one thing these victims have already been robbed of. Every day that the files stay hidden is another day our government tells them, your trauma is less important than someone else's comfort.
And he's not saying that what Epstein did is a hoax. It's a terrible, unspeakable evil. He believes that himself. When he first heard the rumor, he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. He was an FBI informant to try to take this stuff down. The president knows and has great sympathy for the women who have suffered these unspeakable harms. It's detestable to him. He and I have spoken about this as recently as 24 hours ago.
What I was referring to in that long conversation was what the victim's attorney said. More than a decade ago, President Trump kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago. And he was one of the only people, one of the only prominent people, as everyone has reported, not President Trump, but everybody about him, that he was willing to help law enforcement go after this guy who was a disgusting child abuser, sex trafficker, all the allegations. That's what they heard. So the president was helpful in that. I don't know if I use the right terminology, but that's common knowledge, and everybody knows that. So this is much ado about nothing.
Was he ever asked to wear a wire or anything like that?
I have no idea. No, I'm not saying that. I have no information about that whatsoever. I was repeating what has been common knowledge for a long time. The president was helpful in trying to get Epstein, for the law enforcement to go after Epstein. That's always been my understanding. That's common knowledge. It's the public's understanding. I was not breaking news there.
And it's not just about Congress. We're hearing reports that the White House has been calling it a hostile act for legislators to sign this discharge petition. Think about what that language means. A hostile act to demand transparency about a sex trafficking network. A hostile act to say, let's at least vote on whether to release these documents. If that phrase is really being thrown around behind closed doors, it means some very powerful people see accountability itself as the enemy. Not just this case, not just these files, but the idea that the public gets to know what was done in their name and in the shadows of their institutions. This is the through line: accountability versus impunity. On one side, you've got survivors. You've got voters who've had their voices stolen. You've got rank and file Americans who are sick of being told that elites can do whatever they want. On the other side, you've got a political movement that has turned law and order into a costume. They rail against groomers at school board meetings that trip over themselves to protect a man who joked about walking into teenage dressing rooms, who surrounded himself with people now tied to this scandal, and who built his inner circle around loyalty, not decency. Mike Johnson is standing right in the intersection of those two forces. On one side, Trump and the MAGA machine telling him his status, his speakership, his legacy depend on staying loyal and keeping the doors locked.
But you're confident you'll get the signatures?
I'm pretty sure. I mean, it's a strong effort from the White House. They are literally calling it a hostile act to sign this discharge petition now. And I don't know if that's precedented in this country to have a president call legislators to say that they're engaged in a hostile act, particularly when the so-called hostile act is trying to get justice for people who've been victims of sex crime.
On the other side, a clear majority of the House, including members of his own party, siding with survivors and demanding sunlight. That's why you see him nervous at press conferences, dodging questions, fleeing the podium. He feels the walls closing in from both directions. There's no way to pretend this is just another procedural fight about the calendar or committee jurisdiction. Everybody knows what's at stake. For the rest of us, the question is bigger than any one man, bigger than Mike Johnson, bigger than Donald Trump, bigger even than Jeffrey Epstein. If a democracy can't hold powerful people accountable for something as basic as child abuse and trafficking, then what exactly is it good at? If our system can brand a simple transparency petition a hostile act, What happens the next time someone tries to investigate corruption in the Supreme Court, or enforce ethics rules on a president, or protect voting rights from being gutted by state governments? Once you've normalized that kind of language, there's no obvious stopping point. In the coming days, we're going to get a partial answer. We'll see if the House follows through and forces that vote to release the Epstein files. We'll see if the Senate tries to run interference and keep the lid on. We'll see who stands with survivors and who hides behind procedure. Whatever happens, it's clarifying. It exposes which leaders actually believe that no one is above the law, and which ones think that phrase only applies to people without private jets and VIP club memberships. And here's the thing that should give us a little bit of hope, even in a story this dark. The fact that this pressure exists at all is because ordinary people refuse to shut up about it. It's because journalists kept digging, because advocates kept organizing, because voters kept asking, why are these files still sealed? It's because eventually, even some Republicans realized they couldn't explain this stonewalling to their own constituents anymore. That's what democracy looks like when it's straining against its own captured institutions. So no, this isn't just about Epstein. It isn't just about Trump. It isn't just about Mike Johnson. It's about whether the United States is willing to confront the ugliest parts of its own power structure and say, we're not doing this anymore. Either we stay locked in a system where predators are protected because they're rich and connected, or we take a step, maybe a small one, but a real one, toward a country where the law actually applies to everyone. That's the choice sitting in front of Congress right now. That's the choice the world is watching us make. And whatever happens, history will remember who chose sunlight and who chose the dark.